present now a window and somehow now I think it is showing. Is it visible to everybody?
Second, okay.
Is it visible to
Yes,
everybody, the
sir.
slide?
Yes, sir. It is visible. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. And I'm properly audible?
Yes, sir.
You
You are
can hear
audible.
me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So we
Ma'am,
will start.
sir, wait a minute, sir. Ma'am, ma'am, can you hear me? Ma'am, can you hear me? Ma'am, you are not audible. You are mute. Unmute yourself, ma'am.
I can hear you, Meenu.
Okay, ma'am, can I
Start,
start?
start.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Should we
A
start
very
now
good
or should
afternoon.
we wait for another 5 minutes? Because the time was
Sir,
3:15.
we are
If
just
everybody is there,
starting. Yes, sir. Sir, we are
okay,
just starting. A very good
okay.
afternoon to everyone present here. I, Dr. Meenu Walian, welcome you all for the today's Knowledgeable Friday session on the topic the impact of prompt corrective actions of RBI on Indian banking industry. Today we having Mr. Harsh Vardhan Sharma as our expert of the session. Let me take this opportunity to introduce Mr. Harsh Vardhan Sharma to the house. Sir is currently associated with SWA Enterprises as a president and CEO. Sir has delivered large number of lectures in the area of finance as a guest speaker at IIM Bangalore, Jain University Bangalore, the Stock Market Institutes Bangalore, IBS and SBI Gurgaon, and many more in the list. Without further ado, I would like to request you, sir, please take over the charge of the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Today's session is regarding impact of prompt corrective action of RBI on Indian banking industry. Now, when I was having informal discussion with one of the faculty member, they told me that the participants are students of MBA and all of them are not having finance as their major subject. So there would be participants from HR, marketing, and from other streams also. So I was told that the discussion should remain light and any financial jargon, if used, be explained. So I would like to have an interactive mode of session. I would like that whatever we discuss that is responded well and to ensure that I may be asking some questions to the student to understand that whether what we are discussing is being understood by them or not. So regarding the topic, because we will be glued and focused to the topic of the day, that is impact of prompt corrective action of Reserve Bank of India on Indian banking industry. Now, here there are few terms even in this caption. One is Indian banking industry. Now, I would like somebody from the non-finance background to make me understand What do we mean by Indian banking industry? Somebody who is from HR or who is from marketing stream, I would like someone to mute. For someone should unmute and then tell me what is meant by Indian banking industry. Can somebody unmute? May I see the names of the participants?
Sir, you can see
Somebody,
the participant list on the
okay,
right side. On the right side, people and chat option is there.
okay. Anyway, I am unable to see it, but
Okay, sir.
anybody can the faculty member can find out the name of somebody who is from HR stream. I would like to interact with the person from HR stream.
Brinda,
Brinda.
Yes, sir. Good
Brinda,
afternoon, sir.
good afternoon, Brinda. Brinda, are you having any account with any bank?
Yes, sir. I'm having an account in Indian Bank.
Indian Bank, very good. Uh, why don't you open an account with Reserve Bank of India also? It is a very big bank.
So I am not that much into banking, and also I'm
Okay,
not aware about banking that much.
okay, okay. So, but I just wanted to understand, can you open an account with Reserve Bank of India?
So no, we cannot open an account in RBI. RBI regulates bank,
Okay,
so we cannot open in, like, we cannot have a legit account in RBI or something, because it regulates banking system and it regulates other banks.
oh, I see. So RBI, though its name is Reserve Bank of India, but it is not a normal bank. Am I right?
Yes, sir. It is having the authority of regulating other banks.
Other banks. Okay. And you are having an account with Indian Bank, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So Indian Bank is a private sector bank or a public sector bank? Is it a private sector bank or a public sector bank? Okay, let me ask, let me interact.
So
Please,
it's a
please, come.
public
Pardon?
sector bank.
Public sector bank.
Public
What do you
sector
mean by
bank,
public sector bank?
in which government has ownership of more than 50%,
Perfectly fine.
51%.
You have replied very well both the questions, though you are not from the finance stream. Now, I would like to interact with somebody with finance stream. Can any faculty member point out the name of somebody from finance stream?
So just a minute, sir.
Ask
Muskan,
Akanksha
Pardon?
Rastogi.
Akansha Rastogi.
Akansha Rastogi. Akansha Rastogi, my question to you is that which bank are you having an account?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am. My question is which bank you are dealing with?
Sir, Bank of Baroda.
Bank of Baroda. So I would like to understand that is it a private sector bank or a public sector bank?
Sir, it is a
It
private
is a
sector.
private sector bank. Are you sure about it? Okay,
Sir, no, sir, it is a public
public
sector.
sector bank. I think the second answer is right. It is again a public sector bank. And I will again ask the same question which I asked with your friend a few minutes before. Can you open an account with
Yes.
Reserve Bank of India?
No, sir.
Why? That's more important to me.
Sir, Reserve Bank of India regulates the banking system in our country, and
Okay.
it helps the banking system to monitor the rates of the interest rate or the repo rates.
Very right, very right. Absolutely right. You are absolutely right. Now, let me talk to somebody who is having an account with either HDFC Bank or Axis Bank or Kotak Mahindra Bank. Is everybody listening to me? Anybody having account in HDFC, Kotak Bank, Axis Bank? Anybody can talk to me? Can interact with me? Anybody having an account with these banks? Or IndusInd Bank? Nobody is having an account with these banks?
Sir, I am having an account in ICICI Bank.
ICICI Bank. Whom I am talking to?
Abhishek Mishra,
Mr.
sir.
Abhishek Mishra. So ICICI Bank. Is it a private sector bank or a public sector bank?
Sir, it is a private sector bank.
Private sector bank. So what do you mean by private sector bank?
Sir, according to me, the rate of interest is high in
Very good.
private sector banks.
Rate of interest on what? FD or saving bank?
Of your saving account, the amount of money you store in that bank,
Okay.
the rate of interest is high on that amount.
So rate of interest in ICICI Bank is higher than that of the Bank of Baroda or Indian Bank, where the other two participants were having their accounts. Am I getting you right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. That is the
Yes,
issue
sir.
which we'll be discussing. But right now, our focus would be to the terms which we are using in this caption. So to further narrow it down, we are discussing prompt corrective action on Indian banking industry. And in Indian banking industry, there are 12 banks which were brought under prompt corrective action of Reserve Bank of India in April 2017. So this prompt corrective action of Reserve Bank of India was imposed on 12 banks in April 2017. And out of these 12 banks, 11 banks were in public sector and one bank was from private sector. That is why I was discussing with you that I just wanted to emphasize what is the difference between these two banks, these two categories of the banks. So now I come to the second slide. Now this slide shows that what are the various classification of banks in India. But for the purpose of this discussion, we will be concentrating upon the commercial bank, and under commercial bank, the public sector bank and private sector bank. Because this session is not for discussing the classification of bank in India, but it is to understand the impact of prompt corrective action on Indian banks. And since the affected banks were from public sector bank, very large majority from public sector bank, that is 11 banks from public sector and only one bank from private sector. So I will be confining only to these two categories while we are discussing the main topic. So what I could make out is that people do understand the difference between the public sector bank and the private sector bank. Public sector bank, both the participants had very correctly said that the majority of equity is held by Government of India. And in private sector bank, the majority of the equity is brought by private entities. So this is the difference. And why I am emphasizing upon it is that when we develop our discussion on prompt corrective action, that would be an important point to consider. So for the purpose of the main topic, we are now discussing classification of banks only for two categories. One is public sector bank and another is the private sector bank. And both of them are under the broad category of commercial banks. Is that point clear? Any question regarding classification of bank for the limited purpose of this discussion? Anybody has any doubt about the public sector bank and the private sector bank? Because if you have got any doubt, right now clear it, because later on this will make you understand as how the firm action has affected the public sector banks and private sector banks. So that's why I wanted everybody to be sure of as what is the meaning of the public sector bank and what is the meaning of the private sector bank. Any question up to this point? Silence mean what? People have understood it or people have not understood it?
Yes, sir. Everything is understood.
Perfectly fine. Thank you. Now again coming to the topic. So we have now understood Indian banking industry. Here I am not discussing total Indian banking industry. I am discussing only about two categories. One is public sector bank and the private sector bank. Now we come to RBI. What is RBI? The two participants have very rightly said that RBI is the regulator, is a supervisor, and the function, one of the two main functions, of course there are lots many functions of Reserve Bank of India, but the main two functions are the regulation, supervision of banking and non-banking financial institutions. So regulation and supervision, this is the function of a central banking authority. Every country has got a central banking authority. The name of the central banking authority in India is Reserve Bank of India. Like we have got in United States of America. Can somebody tell me what is the name of the central banking authority of United States of America? Can somebody tell me? Because we keep on hearing about it in the news. They call it Federal Reserve. Names are different. But the function of the central banking authority is two things. They have got, of course, lots many functions. It is listed over there, but I will not be discussing everything because the discussion is not for the functions of the Reserve Bank of India. It is just incidental that Reserve Bank of India figures in the discussion, that I have to understand whether you understand these two important functions of Reserve Bank of India or not, because it is going to help us in understanding the final point of prompt corrective action. So Reserve Bank of India is the central banking authority in India. They have got a power to decide about the monetary policy, which is a very important function of any central banking authority. And the second one is regulation, supervision, and development. That is also very important. Regulation, supervision, and development of the banking and non-banking financial. And we might have NBFC, non-banking financial corporation. Can somebody tell me what is the difference between a bank and a NBFC?
Somebody please reply this question.
Can somebody tell me? But I'm unable to see the name, so otherwise I will point out some name. Faculty member, can you point out somebody who is from finance background?
Yes,
Or
sure.
anybody?
Eva, can you reply this question? What is the difference between NBFC and banks?
Yes, yes,
Tell
sir.
me, Eva.
So a bank is a government entitled financial intermediary. Like the government has more control over a bank, and NBFC provides similar services like banking, but it doesn't have a bank license.
Ma'am, your answer is partly correct and partly absolutely wrong. Can anybody else tell me what is the difference between the two? I will, after listening to one or two more persons, then I will come out and tell you the difference between the two. Somebody else can tell me that what is the difference between a bank?
Muskan, can you reply this question? Prince.
Or you can give it a try. All of you can give it a try. Don't
Right, nothing
bother
wrong.
about whether
Right
it's
or
right or
wrong.
wrong. Doesn't matter.
I'm sure that faculty members and myself, we don't know everything about anything. So our knowledge is limited. Everybody has got a limited knowledge. And it's quite likely that when you ask me some question, I may not have an answer for that. And I will very frankly tell you, I will not say that I'm sorry. I will say I don't know. Why one feels sorry if one doesn't know? Nobody knows everything. I don't know, and your faculty, I'm sure, also don't know everything about everything. So if you don't know, doesn't matter. If you know wrongly, then again doesn't matter. I will correct it. If I know the answer, I will correct it. I know the answer of this question, so I will correct you immediately. So difference between a bank and a NBFC, non-banking financial company.
So NBFC cannot accept demand deposit.
Can I?
Very right. Absolutely very right.
And bank accepts demand deposit.
Any other difference? Very right. It's because as far as because both of them are regulated by Reserve Bank of India, that is for sure. But the difference between the two is that if you go to a bank, whether it is somebody has told me that a bank is owned by the government, it is partly correct. Some banks are owned by the government, or they are having the major equity, which are known as the public sector bank. But there are certain banks which are not owned by the bank. Like ICICI, one of our friends was having an account with ICICI. ICICI is not a government bank. It doesn't have any equity from the government. And for that matter, Kotak Mahindra Bank doesn't have. For that matter, IndusInd Bank doesn't have. HDFC Bank doesn't have. So it is not necessary that the bank necessarily has to have the equity from the government. It could be from private entities also. So that is not a difference. The difference between the two is that the Schedule 2 of Reserve Bank of India has got a list of the banks which have been given license by Reserve Bank of India to conduct banking business in India. These are the only entities which are allowed to collect money in savings bank account, current account, and demand deposits. NBFC cannot. If you go to an NBFC, HDFC Limited is a NBFC, HDFC Bank is a bank. If you go to HDFC Bank, you can open a current account, savings bank account. But if you go to HDFC Limited, which is a non-banking financial corporation, a non-banking financial company, you cannot open a savings bank account or current account. So demand deposits can be accepted only by the banking industry, only by the banks which have been licensed by Reserve Bank of India, and their name appears in Schedule 2. If you go to the website of Reserve Bank of India and you find out what are the names of the banks, you can find out. So you will have banks which are in the public sector, which are in private sector, and also so many other banks. Cooperative banks are also there, but of course now the discussion, I don't want to sort of defocus this discussion. I am not discussing the categories of the banks. Right now I am discussing impact of prompt corrective action on banking industry. So the role of Reserve Bank of India is very important for a very simple reason. This very function which I have mentioned over there, it is under this power that Reserve Bank of India imposed prompt corrective action on certain banks which, according to their judgment, were weak banks. Reserve Bank of India realized that there are 12 banks, and out of these 12 banks, 11 banks were from public sector. That is the bank which was owned by, or where the majority of the equity, owned by is a very loose word, where the majority of the equity is from Government of India. and one bank was from private sector. So here the point is that when Reserve Bank of India imposed prompt corrective action on these banks, what are the implications of that? So let me come to that. This monetary policy, if time permits, I will discuss, because we have to, this also I will discuss if time permits. Now this I'm coming to this. Now when in April 2017, this prompt corrective framework of Reserve Bank of India was imposed on 12-week banks, the Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank of India, Mr. Acharya, said that it has been done with a view to strengthen the financial stability of these banks. Fine. The Deputy Governor of Reserve Bank of India says that there must be some force in it. Now, the governor, the then governor, Mr. Dr. Urjit Patel, he said that the PCA framework emphasizes the desirability of systematic and structured early intervention by Reserve Bank of India in respect of the banks which have become undercapitalized due to poor asset quality or have become vulnerable due to poor profitability. Now let me explain what does it mean. So one thing is very clear from these two statements from very responsible officer of Reserve Bank of India, and as a matter of fact, both of them were instrumental in imposing prompt corrective framework on these banks. It was a very bold step, very bold step. Out of 21, at that point of time, there were 21 public sector banks. Out of them, you say that 11 banks are being put into prompt corrective framework of Reserve Bank of India, which means that they will not be allowed to make advances to certain sectors. They will be making advances only to retail sector, where the amount of the loan is quite low. Now, what is the function of any bank? Any bank receive deposit and make advances. Their profitability comes from the advances which they make. That is the main function of a bank. Now you are telling that 11 out of 21 banks which are owned by Government of India are not allowed to make fresh advances under certain segment, and it is quite ridiculous. Then what for these banks to exist? The main function, they are being denied. They are being denied from making advances. There was a lot of huge cry, not only from those banks, but from various other quarters. So much so that even the then finance minister, he said openly on various forums, in various seminars, that this action of Reserve Bank of India probably will put the Indian economy in problem. He said that we are developing. At that point of time, India was being projected as if we are developing at a very high rate. So he said that our growth will get stunned. It will come into the way of the flow of credit to the various sectors of our economy. So it will throttle the growth of our economy. But Reserve Bank of India was very clear. They said, no, it is a need of hour. These banks have got all the signs of being weak. I will explain what do we mean weak in banking jargon. In financial jargon, in banking sector, what does weak bank mean? So they said these are the weak banks. But that, of course, we can make out that weak bank means that there's some problem with these banks. So Reserve Bank of India was quite clear in their mind that it is the need of hour, it is essential to impose prompt corrective framework on these banks even if government has got reservations. So the then finance secretary, of course, he was later on he became the finance secretary. At that point of time, he was the secretary to the Government of India and the Department of Revenue. And that is the person who controlled from the government side, Reserve Bank of India. He was also very critical. He agreed with his minister that action of Reserve Bank of India seems to be misplaced, and both minister and his secretary being one of the senior most IAS officers, both of them had lots of reservation about the imposition of prompt corrective action, and more so because it will affect the flow of credit to MSME. What is MSME? Can somebody explain me what is MSME? Somebody from finance background? Mr. Arun Jaitley, who was the then finance minister, he sat at various forums, and Mr. Subhash Chandra Garg, who was the Secretary to Government of India, Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance, he also was absolutely in agreement with his boss that the action of Reserve Bank of India in imposing prompt corrective action on 12 banks is probably needs to be re-looked into. But Reserve Bank of India, and particularly Dr. Urjit Patel, who was a governor at that point of time, and Dr. Viral Acharya, they were equally vehemently very clear in their mind that it is very necessary, it is essential for strengthening the banking sector, and for that matter, for strengthening the financial system of India. I was asking the question, what is the meaning of MSME? Can somebody from finance background tell me? Because this again will come into the discussion. So that's why I would like to understand what is the meaning of MSME.
Sir, it is a micro, small and medium enterprises.
Very right, absolutely right. Who is the person who is answering this question? What is your name?
Sir, this side Prince Sharma.
Prince Sharma. Prince Sharma, you are absolutely right. So as the name says, micro, M micro, S small, another M medium enterprises. It means that these are the entrepreneurs, those who are either very, very small or small, and they are not very big. They may be medium size. So they are the backbone of Indian economy. So in case if the flow of credit to MSME get affected, then what will happen? Our economy will suffer. But was it correct? Was the contention of government, which they came up openly? It was not that they privately discussed it with the Reserve Bank of India. Publicly on various forums, they said, on record also they said, that it will affect, they kept on harping, because when it was brought out by the government that it will hinder the growth of Indian economy, the Reserve Bank of India, they tell them that, okay, these are the banks which were not really equipped to assess, monitor, and follow up the big advances. That's why the NPAs are increasing. And it doesn't mean that if these banks are not allowed, or they are allowed restricted powers to sanction fresh loan, that the Indian economy will suffer. The person, those who are dealing with them, they can switch over to other banks which are better managed. And that is how the industry should function. If a bank is doing well, everybody should come to that bank. If a bank is not doing well, if bank doesn't have good systems, bank doesn't have good manpower who can assess, who can follow up properly, and who can regulate the advances, then that bank should not be allowed to, because what will happen? Then the bad loan will increase. I had used the word non-performing assets. Can somebody tell me what is the meaning of non-performing assets? Anybody can tell me what's the meaning of non-performing assets?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Who is this? What's your name? Hello? Hello?
Sir, I think she has lost the connection.
Okay, anybody else? If somebody can tell me what's the meaning of non-performing assets? Because this word will come time and again during our discussion. So I would like to understand that what is your understanding of this word?
Sir, the debts that are not realized by the industry.
The debts which are not realized by the industry. When you say industry, you mean bank. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
You have correctly defined it. May not be technically absolutely very elaborate, but then you are absolutely 100% right when you say so. Because what happens when you make advances, when you make loans, all the loans will not be repaid. That's for sure. Banking is a business, and like any other business, banking business also has got a risk. Now, at one point of time, Nokia was a big name. All of you, I remember, those who, of course, younger people, I don't know, but who are in the middle age, and maybe even the younger people also. About 10 years back, everybody has Nokia mobile phone with him or her. Now, it is nowhere to be seen. There are so many other brands also. Now, previously, we used to buy cameras. Now, there's no need to buy a camera because our camera is very much in our smartphone. So it does happen that at times, for reasons beyond the control of a businessman or the industrialist, the account become bad. So things keep on getting obsolete. So a particular level of NPA is a normal phenomena for a banking industry. But if the quantum of bad loans increases, then it is a reason for worry. So this is a particular level up to which they will say, okay, this is the level of NPA, non-performing assets. Non-performing assets mean that is loan where either you are not getting the interest on it, the borrower is not in a position to pay you the interest, or the principal, or both. So it could be that it is a term loan and the borrower is required to pay the installment as well as the interest. So any one of the two or both, if it is not paid for 90 days, it becomes non-performing asset. In other words, this account is not generating any income to the bank because neither you are getting interest or you are not getting the installment or any one of the two, because the purpose is that whatever loan you make, you should be able to get the principal as well as the interest on that. Because you know what happens, that when you accept a deposit, from where you make advances, you receive deposits, you receive money in saving bank account, current account, in fixed deposits. The rate of interest on current account is 0. Saving bank, it is coming down, and it is again quite a small amount. In fixed deposit also it is coming down, but it is certainly more than the saving bank account. So whatever is the cost of funds. So when bank receives these deposits with them, there is a cost attached to it. They have to pay interest to the depositor. Now, this money which is received at a low rate of interest is employed, is used in making advances, where the rate of interest are higher. So the difference between the two is the income of the bank. So now, in case if we are unable to realize that income, what is the income? Interest. and we are not in a position to even realize the principal. So then what will happen? Instead of making profit, you are making loss. You had given a loan of say 1 crore, you were to get an interest of 10 lakhs. Now you got a interest only 5 lakhs. And there could be a situation where you don't get any interest at all. And at the same time, if it was repaid in the installment of say 1 lakh per month, and that also doesn't come, then what will happen? You are paying to your depositor for the money which was placed by them with you, but you are not getting any interest. Rather, not only interest, even the principal is not being returned to you. So what will happen? The bank will start making losses. So this NPA or non-performing asset is a very important factor. Is very, very important factor when we discuss this prompt corrective framework of Reserve Bank of India, because that is the main reason why this prompt corrective framework of Reserve Bank of India was imposed on these banks, because it was found that NPA of these banks were higher than the accepted level. Say 6% would be assumed to be a normal default. But if the default or if the level of NPA is 9%, 10%, 12%, 15%, in certain cases it was even much higher than that. So then what will happen? This bank will slowly eat up its equity. What happens? That you cannot say no to your depositor. If you have deposited bank, if you deposit your money in your savings bank account to the bank cannot say, sir, we have not been able to realize our loan, so we can't pay you. Is it acceptable? Has it happened to anybody in Indian banking system that you go to a bank and they say, sir, please come after 10 days. We are waiting for the installment of our loan, and once it is here, we will make you payment. No. So from where it is paid? Whatever loss is made, that is made from the capital of the bank. Now what will happen? That after some time, if suppose the capital is about 10%, the capital of a bank is about 10% of the loans, then till these bad loans are up to 10%, that is fine. Not fine, but that is understood. I am just making for the sake of discussion I am discussing. Because 10% is their own money. So till the bad loans or NPA are up to 10%, okay, fine. Their equity or capital will become zero. But what happens if it becomes 11%, 12%? Because capital was only 10% of the loans which were made. Now the bad loans are 11, 12%, 13%, 15%. Then what will happen? The money of the depositors, from where the bank will be able to repay or pay back money in savings bank account? Has it happened to anybody in Indian banking that if you go to the bank and they will say, no, sir, you will not be able to make a payment? It has never happened. So why it has not happened? Because Reserve Bank of India has been very, very careful that such a situation does not arise. And that is how and why this prompt correcting framework of Reserve Bank of India was imposed in April 2017, because it was found that the NPA level of the banks is going up and up and up, and it was a one-way journey. It was going up and up and up. A situation will arise when bank will have to touch the deposit placed by the general public with them. Now, is it clear to everybody up to this point? Any question, any doubt? So what, please, anybody tell me, ask question? Please unmute and ask the question.
Sir, you can carry on if there is no query.
Okay, fine. So it is important to control. It is very, very important, not important. It is very crucial that the non-performing assets of the bank are controlled and they should not go beyond a particular level. If they go, then what will you do? Then you have to think whether this bank should continue in the business or not. Because business is done for making profit. And here the situation is all the more difficult. Here it is not your own money. If you are in your own business and you make losses, you suffer. Others don't suffer. But here, people have got faith in Indian banking industry. They have put their money in Indian banks thinking that it is safe, and that bank had not lived up to their expectation, has not been able to recover its loans, and now this bank wants to eat up the money placed by general public with them. But will Reserve Bank of India let it happen? No. That is the function of Reserve Bank of India. Why I was discussing this function of a regulator. Reserve Bank of India is a regulator, is a supervisor. And Reserve Bank of India is also responsible for the development of the banking system in India. So it is here Reserve Bank of India took a stand that we cannot let these 11 banks in public sector to continue to function in the fashion they are functioning. Let government say whatever, because what happens? Central Banking Authority has got certain powers. You know, we are in a democracy, and when it comes to the fiscal powers are with the government, the Ministry of Finance. But when it comes to the monetary policy, when it comes to the supervision of the bank, so the Central Banking Authority has got powers. Though the Reserve Bank of India Act 1934 has given certain power to central government that in very exceptional cases they can direct Reserve Bank of India, but this power is never used. When this controversy between the Ministry of Finance and the Reserve Bank of India was going on, at that point of time, in certain quarters, it was suggested that why don't central government use this power, because they have got a power to direct Reserve Bank of India. But then Dr. Viral Acharya, and not only he, everybody else, the ex-governors of Reserve Bank of India, and not only that, Mr. Jalan, Y.B. Reddy, and so many others, Subba Rao, not only they, but everybody else also said that, okay, this is a power which is given because this act was formulated when we were under the rule of Britishers. Now we are an independent country. And more than that, if you do it, you can do it probably legally. Probably. It's probably. But then what will be your reputation in the international arena? Because in case if the central government, and for that matter, the government starts meddling in the affairs of Central Banking Authority, then what will happen? The financial system of that country may face hell of a problem. So thankfully, better things prevailed, and central government did not go to that extent. So what I'm trying to tell here is that Reserve Bank of India, and for that matter, Central Banking Authority of any country, in the United States of America also, President Trump used to keep on telling the Federal Reserve, which is the central banking authority over there, that okay, you reduce repo rate, you increase the repo rate, but they don't listen. In India also it happens, because that is their function. When it comes to the fiscal policy, it is the government of India. When it comes to the monetary policy, it is the Reserve Bank of India, Central Banking Authority. So the roles are absolutely clear-cut defined. So here, this was the main reason why this prompt corrective action of Reserve Bank of India was imposed on 12 banks. Of them, 11 were in the public sector. Now, what happens that here, now this Dr. Udit Patel had mentioned over there that in case if the NPA level is become undercapitalized due to poor asset quality. What do you mean by poor asset quality? Poor assets are the loans which bank makes. Poor asset quality. Poor quality means that the loans are not being serviced properly. You are not getting return on that. So if that happens, then you eat up into your capital. So that is why all over world, certain level of capital which banks are required to keep in relation to the assets, in relation to the advances which they make. And Basel is a place in Switzerland. And after that place, because the central banking authorities of various countries meet on regular interval over there and take a view and decide that what should be the level of capital adequacy. I'm again using a word, capital adequacy. I will explain it. If somebody can explain me why, otherwise I will explain it. The certain level of adequacy, capital adequacy be maintained. I will not go too much detail into it, but I will just tell you what is capital adequacy. Time is running out, so I have to now cover it fast. Capital adequacy means that there has to be a relationship between the capital of the bank and the advances it can make. Now, the bank cannot make advances to any extent. Suppose if the capital of a bank is 10 crore and we have to keep a capital adequacy of 9%, then it is to be kept in mind that the amount of loan should not exceed too much. Now, this capital should remain minimum 9% of the total assets. The reason being, rationale behind it is that as per the assessment of the central banking authorities, probably 9% is a reasonable cushion. So these are known as Basel norm. Right now, the Basel norm is 8%. Basel says that this is not legally binding on any country, but then every country follows them. Of course, they can decide what is the level for them, but that remains the basis. Now, China has got capital adequacy ratio of 8% only. We have got 9%. I come to that slide. Now, this capital adequacy, I will again not go into much detail into it because that is beyond the scope of this discussion. But you have to understand that as far as the capital is concerned, it has to be in India. We say that this capital adequacy ratio should not be less than 9%. Though, as per the Basel prescription, 8% is the recommendation. But they never say that you can't have it more than that or less than that. It is not legally binding, but then to have a robust financial system or banking system with you, people follow it because it is decided by all the central banking authority on the basis of the economic situation and the banking scenario all over the world. And now, since it is seen that the level of NPA is increasing, so they have also suggested that you should have an additional buffer, capital conservation buffer of about 2.5%. So in other words, 9 plus 2.5, that is 11.5. So a bank in India, as per the prescription of Reserve Bank of India, should have a minimum capital of 11.5. If the level of capital in comparison to the assets, that is to loan, they say risk-weighted assets. I will not go into all these details. For the purpose of this discussion, you have to understand that there is a relationship between the capital which a bank has and the advances which it can make. So roughly, you can understand broadly, you can understand that in case if 9% is the capital adequacy and 2.5% is the capital conservation buffer, then a bank has to have a capital of minimum 11.5 to make an advance of 100 crore. That's a very rough formula I'm giving, because there are certain finer fine to it, but that's probably not within the scope of this discussion. So that is there. So Reserve Bank of India made a study, and then they said that there are three main parameters which define the health of a bank. One is the capital, and now capital, as a matter of fact, if I go back into the history of prompt corrective action, now the prompt corrective action which was imposed in the year 2017 was not the first time that was imposed in India. It was imposed in India in 2002 for the very first time. But there is a difference between the actions taken under the prompt corrective action in 2002 and 2017. That I will discuss a little later. But before that, let me tell you, again, we are not the first country to introduce it. United States of America was the very first country to introduce it in December 1991. In 1980s, a very large number of the banks failed over there. So then they passed a law. It was enacted in their legislative assemblies. And according to that, they set certain, because there the criteria was altogether different. They looked only into the capital. In our model, we went a little further. But at that point of time, America, they focused only on the capital, because the thinking is capital is a cushion, capital is a buffer. In case the capital is high, bank has got a capacity to survive. If this cushion is low, then there are chances that the bank will become a failure. If because of certain risk, and credit risk is one of them, that is the NPA, may go up beyond a certain level, and at that point of time, the bank may fail. So they had come with this idea that any bank which comes below a certain level of parameters will be classified as prompt corrective action bank. And India has borrowed the same nomenclature also. We also call it prompt corrective action. United States of America also call it prompt corrective action. They also have got three threshold level. We also have got three threshold level. Then Peru imposed it in 1996. They also kept the same term, prompt corrective action. Then Japan, they did not change any nomenclature, prompt corrective action. Then Philippines, again, prompt corrective action. But then in 2014, European Union, they also come out with a similar scheme, but they call it EIM, Early Intervention Mechanism. So it more or less the same, but the salient feature of prompt corrective action or EIM are more or less the same. So as far as India is concerned, because a study was made regarding the robustness of our system, then it was found that our system is as good, if not better, than the prompt corrective action or EIM prevailing in various other countries. So for the purpose of our discussion here, and since the time is a factor which we have to keep in mind, so I will just touch up only 3 points. So in Indian context, capital is one thing, which of course is universally everywhere it is accepted. Assets quality, because assets quality affect capital. So they said that the assets quality be also monitored in case if the NPA of a bank increases beyond a particular level, then they again can be classified as PCA bank. And profitability, that is also important, because all these things boil down to profitability. In case, what happens? If NPAs are higher, it eats up into the profitability, it eats up into the capital. So these things, leverage is a part of capital. For the purpose of this discussion, I am not touching it, but it's a part of the capital. Again, so these are the three parameters, three important indicators, which regulator, central banking authority, in our case, Reserve Bank of India, take into account while classifying any bank as a PCA bank. So if the capital of a bank comes down below a particular threshold, if assets quality, that is net non-performing asset, because you have to have certain particular indicator which should be well defined. So they said that general philosophy is very clear that the capital should be adequate. So they said that CRAR, which is measurable, it should be absolutely clearly measurable, because when you say that you are being classified under PCA, then the bank must know for sure that why and what were the labels which that bank was supposed to keep. So they decided that indicator will be CRAR, but for the purpose of our understanding, we have to understand the concept. We are not banker, we are not dealing with the strengthening of the banking system as far as this discussion is concerned, though of course we have to understand it. So here we have to understand that capital is one factor and a parameter has been given to it, so that there is no ambiguity. Asset quality, again the quality of loan, again a parameter has been given, that is NNPA. And for the profitability, the return on asset, they say that in case if the bank is not making profit for the last 2 years continuously, then of course it is again to be treated as PCA bank. So now is it clear up to this point? Everybody is clear up to this point? So when I was discussing about the weak banks, I said that this PCA has been imposed on the weak bank. So then how the banks were classified as weak? These were the parameters. Capital adequacy, which indicate that whether it is adequately capitalized or not, whether it is having adequate cushion of capital to absorb the losses, whether it is because of any reason. It may not necessarily be because of the quality of the assets. It could be because of certain other risk factor, because operational risk is also there. So there are so many other factors which are for beyond our level of discussion. So here is that we have, the Reserve Bank of India decided that these are the three main parameters, these are the three main indicators which will make them to decide. There should be no ambiguity, there should be no subjectivity. They gave exact figure that in case if you cross that threshold, then you will be classified as PCA, and then there were certain three different level of NPA and three different level of treatment which were to be given, but that is beyond the scope of our discussion. So up to this point, so let me summarize it. Reserve Bank of India, which is the central banking authority of the country, has got a power to regulate, supervise, and find out the ways and means of developing banking system in India. And they found it necessary for the survival or for the strengthening or for the stability of the banking system in India to impose prompt corrective action framework on certain banks. Come what may, let Government of India has got reservation. So of course, the fact remains that there was a lot of discussions between Government of India and Reserve Bank of India, and one of the reasons why Dr. Urjit Patel and Dr. Viral Acharya resigned was one of the factors, not the only factor. The other factor was also somewhat related to it, and that was IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which again is related to it, because that is the most potent law which has ever been passed in India, and that too was brought by this government. The present government has brought it. Mr. Arun Jaitley was the finance minister at that point of time. But then there were certain differences. So not that way that the intention of the present government as far as recovery of loans is concerned is under doubt. Certainly not. Had it been so, they would not have brought the most potent law which India has ever seen and which resulted into the recovery of very large amount was brought by this government. And Reserve Bank of India welcomed it. They came out with a circular that in case if the bad loans are there and it is beyond a particular level or a particular amount, then automatically the matter will refer for IBC. There was a circular issued in February 2018 that created lots of hue and cry. Again, when the PCA was imposed, there was a lot of controversy. So when this move was taken, when this action was taken or decision was taken by the Reserve Bank of India, and they implemented it also. And in the process, a very good amount, 75,000 crore of bad loans were recovered. And people started having a feeling that, okay, before case go to IBC code, insolvency and bankruptcy code, let us settle the dues with the banks. Previously, they never used to bother. So, certain amounts were recovered through the enforcement of IBC, and certain amounts were recovered because of the fear of IBC. So, the fact remains that that was also because that circular which was issued by Reserve Bank of India in February 2018, which gave no power to the banks to take any other decision but to go to the NCLT. NCLT is the body to which one has to go for recovery or resolution of the bad debt. In other words, I am not going to make it very complicated. The fact remains that these were the factors which contributed for the improvement of the health of the banks, which were otherwise quite weak as far as their status on capital and asset quality was concerned. And that, of course, will affect their profitability. So these are the three things. Fourth, I am not discussing right now because it's part of one. So these three things, because if the asset quality is bad, if the NPA is bad, bad loans are bad, it will affect profitability and it will affect capital. So this is a vicious circle and they are interrelated. And this IBC is again helping in realizing this amount. So these are again interrelated. So there were various things and it happens because there are various lobbies and all that. And I'm not going into all those details. But the fact remains that with the intention, good intention from all sides, it so happens that things at times don't move the way they should. Still, IBC has been a huge success. The fact remains that after this COVID and all that, things have started deteriorating, and one cannot blame anybody for that, because no doubt that business and industry are in trouble. So that is understood. So now the process of NCLT has slowed down, and the reason can be understood. But till the start of this COVID-19 pandemic, IBC was doing fairly well, and a huge recovery was made. So again, I'm summarizing the point up to now, and in case if anybody has got any doubt, please come to discuss with me. So Reserve Bank of India, being the central banking authority, decided that we should impose prompt corrective action on certain banks, and that is necessary. So what were the restrictions which were put on the banks which were brought under prompt corrective action? One was restriction on fresh disbursement of certain categories of the credit facilities. As far as loan to MSME was concerned, it was not to be restricted. A loan up to 25 crore per unit was not restricted. Retail loans were not restricted. As a matter of fact, only those loans which were quite risky, which were risky portfolio, and since these banks, PCA Bank, were probably not equipped to properly appraise high value loan, that precisely could be one of the reasons why these banks had higher level of NPA. There could be so many other reasons, but that could be one of them. So Reserve Bank of India decided that, okay, for the time being, let them not disburse big loans. What will happen? The NPA level will not go further up. So that is one thing. and then restriction on dividend distribution, because in case if the bank is making profit, then profit is to be distributed. They were not making profit, so this is slightly not very relevant over here, because these banks were not actually making any profit. So there's a question of dividend distribution. But anyway, they said that in case if there is any say opportunity, or there is any time possibility of they are making any profit intermittently, then again it is not to be distributed till they come out of the PCA framework. And then the most important was that promoters or owners of the bank have to bring the capital. So why I was discussing this private sector bank and public sector bank, the reason was who are the promoters, or loosely said, who are the owners. So in case of public sector bank, Government of India was the promoter. So it was a duty, or it was a responsibility of central government to infuse fresh equity, to bring fresh capital, to make out schemes, to find out ways and means of improving the capital of the banks which are promoted by them, which are in public sector. And as I have been discussing, that there was only one bank which was in the private sector, which was classified under PCA, and there the promoter of that bank, that of course will not be the government, that will be some private entity. And when PCA was imposed, government did pump during the last 5 years, 3.5 lakh crore has been pumped into the capital of the bank. It is not that way that it was not brought previously also. Ever since the banks have been nationalized, government has been depending upon whichever government was in power. Every government has been pumping fresh equity to the bank, because they have to keep a certain capital adequacy, because Reserve Bank of India through has been emphasizing that there has to be a particular level of capital adequacy. If it goes down, then you have to bring money. And in case of a public sector bank, it is the government which has to bring the money. So in case of these 12 banks, 11 banks were provided during the last 5 years an amount almost equal to 3.5 lakh crore. And in the last session, say about 2 months back, when there was a parliament session, then our finance minister made a request to, or made a move to Lok Sabha, that in the current session, in the current financial year, 20,000 crore rupees be provided as fresh equity to certain banks. And reason was that capital adequacy will come down for the very simple reason that during the COVID-19, the units have not done well, economy has not done well. So the chances of higher NPAs are there. So to preempt the fall of this, we have to take proactive action right now and make a provision, make a outlay to set aside 20,000 crore rupees, which would be infused into the weak banks within this financial year. So these banks were also not allowed to expand their branches. And then provisioning requirement. I will not go much into detail it, but the fact remains that in case if the NPA or the bad loans are high, then that particular bank has to keep a certain amount separately to provide a cushion for if it goes bad. So it is under provisioning. So suppose say in the normal course, if it is a non-performing assets amount, if suppose the provisioning has to be made 10%, then in case of these banks, it would be much more higher than that, 20%, 30%, because these banks are otherwise weak banks. So the chances of these loans going bad is much more in these banks than in other banks. So the provisioning requirement for PCA bank will be higher. And the restriction on management compensation, that of course is irrelevant in India, because in public sector bank, people come from one bank to another, so they don't remain. And this of course is valid for the banks in other developed countries like USA or Japan, where banks are owned by private entities. So here, most of the banks which are under PC are owned by Government of India. So as far as this management compensation is concerned, a person may be in a PCA bank today, and then tomorrow he may go to non-PCA bank, and vice versa. So here the main thing was, here again the main restriction was that there was a restriction on making advances. That was most important restriction. And then as other things are concerned, those are there, but then that is something which created lots of hue and cry. So up to this point, anybody has got any observation? Now this I have already discussed, what is the position of prompt corrective action in other countries. This I have already covered during the discussion. So now from this discussion, you will realize that PCA. Now tell me, I will ask you.
Excuse me, sir.
Tell me.
Sir, we are running short of time.
Okay. Oh, it is 24. So I will conclude my discussion within 2 minutes now.
Yes, sir, sure. Thank you, sir.
So the fact means that I would like to understand from this group, what was your assessment, whether it was essential for Reserve Bank of India to impose post-corrective action on these 12 banks? What is your understanding on the basis of my submission, on the basis of my presentation? What inference you draw? What Reserve Bank of India did, that the banks which were not having enough capital, which were having high level of bad loans, which were not making profit, where the rate on return was bad, they were put under PC. And you would be happy to know that out of 12 banks, 8 banks have come out of PCA during the last 3.5 years. So to that extent, this PCA has been a great success. Now, there has been a study, which there's no time, so I can't share with you, which has shown that during the period 2008 to 18, 11 years, these 12 banks, they have been declining when it comes to their performance, what capital is concerned, when their performance, as far as NPA is concerned, when the profitability, they have been declining. Now, during the period of 3.5 years, there were certain other factors also why it happened. One being that the merger of the banks has also been there. But that is not the only factor. That is not the only reason. Banks have come out. Dhanlaxmi Bank, which was in the private sector bank, has come out. And likewise in public sector bank also, not many banks, their performance improved and they come out of PCA on their own, not because of the merger. So as far as this action of PCA on Indian banking industry is concerned, so the question was, the topic was impact of prompt corrective action of Reserve Bank of India on Indian banking industry. So then I would like to know whether this impact has been good or bad. Can somebody give me 1 minute? I give you. It is 16:27. We conclude within 1 or 2 minutes. So can somebody tell me what is their understanding? What are the impressions this group is having? Whether, because there was a lot of controversy, as I am telling you, the person of the stature of finance minister and the person of the stature of the finance secretary saying that PCA is not good for Indian economy. But Reserve Bank of India felt very vehemently that it was necessary. So what is the opinion of this house, whether this PCA framework of Reserve Bank of India was good for Indian banking industry or not? Then I leave it to you because time is running short and I have another seminar which I have to attend within a minute or two. So I also further can't stretch it, and then for you also listening this topic for such a long period is not that very easy. So thank you very much for the patience. Thank you very much. The audience has been very, very good. They replied to all the questions very intelligently, and I'm quite happy with the response of our participants. And thank you very much, the Institute, which has given me an opportunity to interact with the young people. Thank you very
Sir,
much.
let me take a 1 minute of yours.
Please, who is this?
Sir, I'm Monica Verma,
Okay,
looking after the
okay,
MBA department here.
okay, ma'am.
Sir, it was a very great session in the form of that it was a great what why the action was required and how RBI was correct. You asked the question in the end that what is your opinion? I think it was right on the part of RBI that they started with this corrective action. And as you said, that one bank has come out of that PCA and maybe it's functioning of its own now and making profits. Is it there, sir?
Ma'am, not only one. Out of 12 banks,
Mm-hmm.
8 have come out.
Okay,
Now there
8
are
have come out.
8 have come out. There are only now 4 banks which are left
Okay.
under PCA. So during
Oh, that's
the
good, sir.
period of 3.5 years, 8
Uh-huh.
banks have come out. Their performance, their equity has gone up because Government of India pumps in the
Right.
money in the private promoters also pump
Uh-huh.
money in case of private sector bank.
Say,
And
they are on the track now.
they're on the track. So
No.
out of 12, only 4 banks are still
Uh-huh.
under PCA.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
that is
Okay,
what
sir. That's good, sir.
is effective position.
I think, sir, this the 1 hour time or 1.5 hours time was too less for such a lecture. Punjika must have taken permission for at least 2 hours or 2.5 hours. Then it would have been the right value for this type of session where it was a great learning. I think students have learned a lot and the way you have explained the things to them in such a lucid manner, in comprehensive manner, that is really appreciable, sir. And I express my deep sense of gratitude to you for taking time out from your busy schedule and trying to explain the things to sir, to all the students in such a good manner. Thank you once again. Thank you so much, sir, for such enlightening session. Thank you so much, sir, and
Thank you very
hope
much.
to see you
Thank you.
again in the future also.
Please. Oh, it will be a pleasure anytime.
Thank you so much, sir.
And thank you very much for giving us an opportunity and also for wonderful audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So we end this meeting and all of you may leave the meeting. Thank you so much,
Thank
sir.
you once again.
Sir, you can leave the meeting.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, sir.